Welcome back to Locks and Lotteries, the less than 5-minute show where I give you all 5 players that you need to succeed for this Sunday's primetime AFC West matchup, as the Kansas City Chiefs attempt to secure their spots in the playoffs and the Denver Broncos attempt to secure their high-value first-round draft pick. My name's Quick Pick Nick, and having simulated dozens of thousands of lineup combinations, here are your Locks and Lotteries for the single game slate on FanDuel for Sunday Night Football, December 6, 2020. If you like this kind of fast-paced calculated content, subscribe and stay tuned for more lineups throughout the season, including a DraftKings iteration of this slate tomorrow morning. To start off this lineup with our first lock at MVP, my model recommends a probably obvious choice, the reigning Super Bowl MVP, the State Farm successor, Patrick Mahomes. At $16,500 on FanDuel, Mahomes is $2,000 more expensive than any other option. This surcharge is certainly worth the extra cost though, as Mahomes is the only player who can consistently score well over 20 fantasy points in every game regardless of opponent. The only time Mahomes didn't score 20 was actually against the opponent in question here, the Denver Broncos, which might seem a bit concerning at first glance. However, this anomaly is nothing more than an unlucky outing for this young stud, as if you look back at the box score from the Chiefs' win against the Broncos a few weeks back, both Kansas City's special teams and defense scored a touchdown, which drastically shifted the pace of the game overall and kept the ball out of Mahomes' hands for more often than what could typically be expected. The Chiefs' defense and special team likely won't score another couple of touchdowns, so Mahomes should be afforded the opportunity to showcase his skills to a fuller extent against Denver this time around. For the next lock of this lineup, my model found the next best highly consistent player behind Patrick Mahomes, the man who broke the 2020 record high for fantasy points just last week, Tyreek Hill. Coming off a 51.5 fantasy point performance, it's hard to ignore the huge potential out of the cheetah here. He probably won't have another half-centennial night, but it's worth noting that over the past 4 weeks, Hill hasn't fallen below 21 fantasy points in a game. Those are quarterback numbers that we're seeing out of this wide receiver, as Hill is seemingly on a Carolina Reaper level hot streak that no team in the league would be able to cool down, especially the Broncos. Looking at that previous face-off between these two teams a few weeks back, Hill did relatively well then too, as he earned 10 targets and a touchdown during a game that was dictated by Kansas City's defense and special teams. Hill is certainly worth finding in your lineup no matter the FanDuel cost, and maybe even worth consideration in the multiplier spot if you think Mahomes might have another dud of a night. In any case, you should certainly find at least these two Chiefs in your lineup, as there are actually two prominent combinations of the back three players that were quite appealing, so I'll note the remainder of the picks as lotteries since there isn't a definitive combination. The first three my model found was quite Kansas City dominant, which might not be such a bad idea to load up on the Chiefs since Kansas City is favored by a monumental 14 points in most sportsbooks, as this first lineup includes Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins, and Brandon McManus. Kelce is clearly Mahomes' second favorite target, as Hill has been on something special recently, but even so, Kelce is still the best tight end in the league, as he ranks first in all relevant fantasy categories at the position, including receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, receptions, and targets. In addition, Kelce is another player who finds himself in the 20-plus club quite often, scoring over 20 fantasy points in 3 of his past 4 contests. Watkins is just coming back off injury and found some very decent volume last week against Tampa Bay, a game that was clearly dominated by Hill and his 15 targets, but still allowed for Watkins to find 7 targets of his own, which is rather promising for just $7,500 on FanDuel. McManus is our last pick because we need to have at least one Broncos player to even submit the lineup, and Denver's kicker is probably their most consistent player, averaging above 9 fantasy points per game, so if you're predicting the Chiefs to completely blow the doors off the Broncos, this is the lineup for you. If you want to find more Denver representation though, I'd start with Tim Patrick, who has found his footing as a consistent wide receiver 2 with decent attention, averaging over 11 fantasy points per game in the 3 weeks before last week, when the NFL decided they wanted Denver to lose, as the Broncos were forced to play with a practice squad wide receiver at quarterback, but with Drew Lock back under center, Patrick should see some decent points. Clyde Edwards-Helaire would follow up in this lineup, as he has a great matchup against the Broncos' bottom 5 defense in rush yards allowed per game compared to their top 10 defense in pass yards allowed per game, especially as the 4th cheapest Chief on FanDuel. By the way, if Edwards-Helaire is out, absolutely lock in Le'Veon Bell for the same reasons that Edwards-Helaire will probably produce. To round out this lineup, we'll once again be going with a kicker, but without the restriction of needing to take a Bronco at this point, you'll have the freedom between McManus, Harris, and Butker from the Chiefs side of the ball, or another wide receiver if you think DeMarcus Robinson or Sammy Watkins will be able to maybe reach double digits. In any case, I like both this lineup combination and the former, so I would recommend either in most contest formats. That's what my model is able to come up with for the Sunday Night Football single game slate on FanDuel tomorrow night, Sunday, December 6th. This has been Quick Pick Nick, the intersection for sports, data analysis, and speed. Thanks for watching.